Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We have got an exciting round of action from the 2026 Candidates Tournament. I've got three amazing games to show you from the open section. The ladies section, or the women's section, was peaceful. 4 draws there. The players just feeling them out. Some very interesting games, but we won't be covering them today. Just 3 decisive results from the open section, and we start with a banger. The Battle of the Americans. It is Fabiano Caruana versus Hikaru Nakamura. And I did see some comments in my prediction video that Hikaru, and it's been a narrative where Hikaru is just holding a lot back, and people are underestimating him, which is a perfectly valid point of view. But he has to show us then what he's got on the board. Fabi surprises everybody and plays knight f3 on the first move. I'm sure Fabiano Caruana has played this before, but he normally sticks to e4, d4. This is not a move I associate with Fabiano Caruana. Hikaru plays d5. We get c4, so immediately challenging the center. And you could have got this via an English, so we get more of an English opening. We get e6 and g3. So Fabi could still go into like a mainline Catalan position, or he could stick to more of a conventional ready slash King's Indian attack. We get d4, and what this does is it takes the game very strictly into like almost a reverse Benoni kind of structure. So we get bishop to g2, knight to c6, short castles, bishop c5 here, and now we get e3, again style of the Benoni. We get knight ge7. You could have perhaps played here like e5. We get knight takes, and now look at this move b4. A beautiful move, takes the bishop away from here, and you want to take the knight. So we get Hikaru taking here, Fabi takes here, and you might be wondering, can you just take this pawn as black? Can you just take this pawn? Queen takes d4. I mean, you can try. You can very much try to take the pawn and try and be 1 pawn up, but queen a4 is a massive problem. Because let's say there's knight c6, which holds on to the bishop. There's, for example, bishop takes c6, pawn takes. Now I take the bishop back. You might be like, what about the rook? What about your queen? You have to like get escape here, and now there's like bishop a3, and your queen might just be trapped, and Hikaru might be temporarily up points of material, but white is completely winning. So you can try, but it's not ideal. So after e takes d4, sorry. So what we get instead is takes, and now short castles from Hikaru. We get queen to b3, the bishop drops back to a5, and now knight to c3 still. This could maybe be taken, but Hikaru continues with development, knight to f5. We now get bishop a3, rook to e8, just sliding out the way of the bishop, and now the move d5. That pawn no longer hanging, you pushing it forward. There's going to be a trade in the center, potentially undermining the defense of this knight, trying to open the bishop up. And so the players have kind of got out the opening, a very long time control. They've spent, Hikaru spent 30 minutes, Fabi spent about 20, and so we're all good. And what really happens is the moment we get tension, the next few moves, Fabi gets his queen kicked around a bit. You could say first with the knight coming to d5, then the bishop going to d7, and now c5. Again, he could take en passant, but that doesn't achieve a lot. So, for example, en passant, and then, you've got potentially bishop takes c6, and now your very powerful bishop probably has to be traded, unless you want to try and stop that with knight to e4. But, this rook on e1 is a pin, so it's very difficult. So, for that reason, we get bishop to b2. Now rook to b8, and now a4, a6, we get d takes e6, bishop takes e6, knight to d5, we get queen to d6, we get bishop takes d4, c takes d4, now rook to e4, looks to try and secure this pawn, but a very nice move here from Hikaru, bishop takes knight. If you take this, you're going to simply be down a piece. If you take back, queen takes, or, rook takes, and then so on and so forth. So for that reason, we get rook takes e8 check, rook takes e8, and now bishop takes. But what we've landed ourselves in is opposite His advantage is building. We get queen to g5. Now, no queen trade. Queen back to d1. Queen to e7. Slight inaccuracy here. We get bishop to c6. Rook to c8. Rook e1. Queen c8. Bishop d5. King f8. And all of a sudden, queen g4. And Fabiano Caruana is better. A couple of inaccuracies, most notably queen e7. And Hikaru just hasn't made progress. And all of a sudden, there are problems in the black position. They're not clear and obvious. And even me, I was looking at the evaluation like, where are the clear and obvious weaknesses? But Hikaru's position is just too delicate. We play rook to d8, but now queen to e4. King slides over to g8, but now queen to f5. Again, subtle. But queen d7, queen f3, rook f8. Now look at this, rook e5. Bishop d6, rook f5. Queen e7, queen g4. Now I tuned in this position. I was out for most of the day. And apparently in one of these positions, after bishop to e5, rook to f3, bishop to f6, now looking to defend. And, perhaps maybe there's a sacrifice, but it doesn't quite work. Trying to just put something in the way and not let the rook see f7. We get, rook to f4, queen to d8, bishop to e4, rook e8, and here, rook f5. And the only real way for Hikaru to continue to try and keep the game balanced is to play queen c8 to offer the queen trade. The queen trade in this position seems to just keep everything simple for Hikaru. He plays queen d7. But now queen f4. Yes, you can attack the queen, but I go back to f3. And all of a sudden, there are huge problems against the black king. Hikaru opts for queen c7, but that allows rook takes f7. Fabiano Caruana has won his pawn. Because the queen cannot take. Well, it has to take. You have queen takes f7, and what you do is you get the rook back. Bishop d5 attacks the queen. Now, you could try and give the queen up and play bishop and rook versus queen. You're not going to win that. You are not going to win that from this position. So for that reason, we play rook e6 and give the rook back like this and try and hold on with queens on the board. But it's just a pawn, but it's enough. We get, bishop d7, check, king slides back. And because of the nature of the position with the opposite colored bishops, we can keep the queens on the board. And Fabi just needs a couple of weaknesses. That principle of 2 weaknesses, and he's got them. He's got 2 or 3 weaknesses. So the weak pawns, this one here on d4, the one on b6, and the one on g7 are all weak and constantly need to be defended. And also he can harass the bishop at various points. We get bishop e4, king e7. Now look at this, bishop g6 and check. And now look at this. Fabiano Caruana does it the right way. Bishop e5, huge mistake. And what we get is f4. Here, in a little bit of time pressure as the players get down 2 minutes on their clock, Fabiano Caruana manages to trade into a winning endgame. Wasn't clean, wasn't the best, but he's now in this winning endgame. And what he does is very masterful. Despite it being opposite colored bishops, he pushes his pawns, and he's got 1 extra pawn, and that is all he's going to need. f6 lost it for just a moment. f6 gave away everything for just a moment. I don't know if it was time pressure because they're in move 78. This has been a long game. Here you've got to be careful because you do not want to freeze everything on light squares. But we get f6, pawn takes, and now check. The king slides over to the wrong square, and it allows Fabi to get in with king c6. He picks up a pawn, and he plays c5. And Hikaru Nakamura resigns the game. But ladies and gentlemen, that is just the first of the 3 games. The first decisive result of the FIDE candidates belongs to one of these 2 men. Javokhir Sindarov and Andrey Esipenko, they faced off in round 1. Sindarov employed a d4 opening, and what we got is a kind of queen's gambit. In exchange, queen's gambit, bishop f4, and very, very solid. That is the thing. We get c4, which is always an interesting move to play as black. The reason being, you're never sure if you want white to take you, or if you want to take and leave like a double IQP or something. So we see, so c4. bishop c2. Now look at this, knight to h5. So Esipenko doing everything he can to kind of equalize the position. So he's going to get himself the bishop pair. Strange move here, playing f6 and then f5 just for the bishop to go back to the same square. We get bishop e6, now b3, queen out to a5, knight drops back to e2. It was obviously hanging from the queen hitting it. And now b5. Esipenko's done brilliantly here. He has pushed a lot of pawns, which can create weaknesses. His knight kind of just sits unrelenting, but he can get this bishop at just about any point he wants. It can't go anywhere without being taken, so he can always give himself a 2 bishops advantage, but he's trying to really get play, and he's forcing Sindarov back. Like, Sindarov's pieces do not make a meaningful impact at the moment. But if you can find a way to get them going, such as moves like knight to f4, seeking to trade this knight and perhaps get the bishop back to safety. So for that reason, we get knight takes f4 and e takes f4. You and I might play bishop takes f4. And I mean, it's not a dreadful move. You might be allowing, g5, g4, but it's not a dreadful move by any stretch of the imagination. But no, e takes f4 is better. Queen drops back to d8, now rook to e1, queen to d7, rook to e3, rook to rook e8, now h4, h6, g3. Now Esipenko is slightly better. Very slightly according to the engine. But this is such a locked up position. The only tension remains on the queen side, but even then, to what end? Because takes, like maybe you take here, and then yeah, okay, open b file. I also have the open b file. And you can't really seize it so well. So again, Sindarov would love to open this bishop. Esipenko would love to open his bishops, get his knight more in the game. It is still targeting this pawn, but this pawn is literally defended by everything you have. So again, how does either side make the breakthrough? So we get a6, king g2, bishop to f7, queen d2. Now queen b4 and queen e2, sorry, bishop, it was bishop b4 and now queen e2. Esipenko is better. He just needs to continue to make accurate moves. He's up, 20 minutes on time. He's got a great position. Much better than we expected for round 1 of the candidates against one of the, most talked about players of the recent months. But he kind of starts going wrong. So bishop a5, it's still okay. Takes. Now we get bishop d1. And taking is wrong. Here, it's -1. It's -1. But it's not so easy because, like, I turn on the engine now, it's like -0.6. So that advantage is very minimal. And what it wants is bishop b6 is what it wants. Get the bishop out the way of the rook. Yes, you give white the open rook, but you're putting pressure on this. And now when you take, you're undermining the defense of this, and by also extension the bishop as well. So that's maybe just an idea that Esipenko misses. He rushes with bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and bishop b6, and it's still the same position. But now I can get my rook in, rook to a6. And now it's not so simple, because you can't just win. So you could play bishop takes, but I play bishop takes. You would play knight takes, but I may not take. I might take the knight. And then you would take my rook. And then I could do something else. I could hit your queen. So, for example, if bishop takes, I would take the knight. I might take the knight. And then if you continue to hit me, I can go here, for example. Your queen slides out the way to, for example, to c8. And then pawn takes. And by the end of it, I have 2 bishops for a rook, which is probably winning. So again, it requires deep calculation. These kind of ideas. So rook a6. Knight takes is the idea. But now look at this, queen h5. I don't even acknowledge it. I don't take the hanging bishop. I don't take the hanging knight. I play queen h5. Look at that. That's a beautiful move. And now Sindarov is on the attack. We sacrifice the rook for the bishop. I just take back. And now queen c6 loses the game on the spot. Pawn takes. Pawn takes. Looks like you just have 2 clean passed pawns that struggle to be stopped. But I have bishop to a4. You can play queen c5. I have queen g6. And even though you can move the bishop theoretically out of the way, I have rook to e8, takes, king moves over, here, bishop out to here, check, a few more checks, and rook to e6. And from the mistake on move 31, 10 moves later, Andrey Esipenko had to resign the game. Javokhir Sindarov wins, and he joins Fabiano Caruana in the lead of the candidates. And finally, I believe this was the second game to finish, Fabi being the last, and Sindarov being the first. Praggnanandhaa Babu and Anish Giri. Again, two players who I would not be surprised if they won, but certainly not favourites, but looking to create some early impetus. We have e4 and c5 from Anish Giri. And you know what he wants on the board is knight to f3, and d6, and d4, and takes, and knight here, and a6, and he gets to play his famous Knight of Sicilian. But Praggnanandhaa is not into any of that. He plays knight to c3, the closed Sicilian. Great for me, because I play the closed Sicilian, so I'm like, yes, it's not dead. We get d6, f4, so going for like a Grand Prix attack of sorts. Very interesting stuff. We have g6, knight to f3, bishop to g7, and now bishop e5 check, bishop d7, and now this move a4. Lovely move. You keep the tension, you expand on the queen side, and it's really, really good. We have knight to c6, short castles, a6, the bishop drops back to c4, where it can just be very useful. And a nuisance, it does also kind of stop black building up just a wee bit. We get e6, we get d3, knight ge7, and look at this f5. Beautiful, beautiful play here in the close Sicilian. Praggnanandhaa bringing the fight to Anish Giri. We have takes, and now look at that, queen e1. King is not castled, I can take, open up the attack. Even if you take, I play like knight takes, gonna be beautiful. The only thing black has is this, and to try and play on the queen side or down the middle. The king side is going to be fully for the use of the white pieces. So, we have bishop to e6, looking to trade off one of those useful pieces. But I just play e takes f5. And now what are you going to do? Take back? Okay, I take, and now I win the pawn. Praggnanandhaa has spent 5 minutes. Anish Giri has spent nearly 25 minutes getting to this position. In fact, after queen d7, he has spent 25 minutes. The position is level. Praggnanandhaa detonates all of this, but the position is level. He is by no means winning. And this is why people don't like classical chess. We play queen to c4, you don't trade the queens. Long castles, bishop to g5, but now rook to e8. How's Pragg gonna win this? Like, he detonates the prep bomb. He's got time, a huge time advantage. Anish Giri now down to an hour 13 versus Pragg's 1 hour 50 when he hits move 17. But again, what do you do? Like, yes, you've got opposite side castling, so there is an inherent dynamic. But Anish also has opposite side castling. Maybe he thinks this isn't kind of Anish's style, but you play the position you have in front of you. So you've got to generate the attack. We get rook ae1. We get the knight out to g6, and the more pieces that come off, the more this is going to be a draw. So we get the knight coming in. This is just threatening a fork at the moment, so we get king slides over to b8. But now look at this. Knight f6, forcing the bishops off. Forcing this. So now we've got bishop versus knight. And that could be an advantage for Pragg. The rook slides over to f8, but the bishop drops back to c3. And now look at this, f4, just clamping down on squares. You know, maybe the knight's going to come in. Maybe we're going to commit this pawn. Maybe we're going to bring the rook back and continue to attack. It's a very double-edged position, but Praggnanandhaa has almost an hour extra on the clock. He's putting Anish Giri under tremendous pressure to find the best move again and again. We get a rook trade, and now the offer of another rook trade. Anish declines. He goes back to f8. But now look at this, queen e6. The queens come off. And now king to c7, and surely, this is where I first saw the game. Surely Anish Giri is going to hold this. That's what I thought. Anish Giri is going to hold this. Pragg can put all the pressure he likes, but he spent most of his time advantage, and he hasn't gotten a lot. He's got bishop versus knight, and maybe the fact he can try and target this weak black structure here on the king side, where the split pawns. He's still got these two together, he's got these four together, and it should be okay. These four are quite solid, but maybe you can attack some of the dark squared weaknesses with your dark squared bishop, bishop d2, and for example. So we get knight to g5, targets, this pawn, looks to get in, looks to perhaps reroute and put pressure on this. We get king to d7, now the rook drops back to e4, and now look at this, rook f5. Fully allows this, takes, and the idea is to just play d5. Happy to give that pawn up, happy to give Pragg a pawn. The rook is forced back, d4, the bishop is forced backwards, and now I get my knight in. And now I'm trying my best to build a fortress, even though you are a pawn up. I will create havoc on your king, I will get my pieces active, and there is nothing you can do. Also, your knight's basically trapped. It can't get out at the moment. So we shall see how this game goes. Why did it refresh the page? I cannot believe it did that. Okay, so we just fast forward through the game. I can't believe that. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. It would not be one of my videos without a technical problem. Anyway, so we saw the knight comes in. We get rook to e4, knight to g4, gets kicked back, but kicked back to where? Kicked forwards more like it, to e3. Now that is a very powerful knight. It is putting pressure in all the right places. So what are you going to do? c3, that's nice. Get cracking on this black blockade. So the knight drops back to d5, but now h4. Again, encroaching. Pragg is fighting back. He's not letting Anish do what he wants to do. Anish down to 3 minutes, but he's only got 4 moves to make until time control. We get knight to g5, and knight f6. With less than 2 minutes on the clock, and still 4 more moves to make, Anish Giri blunders. He plays knight f6, shoots the evaluation up. It looks like a perfectly fine move. Rook e6. 1 knight, 2 knights. Barbecue. How do you defend both? Can you defend both? We take, sacrifice the rook for the knight, takes here, and now we get the rook out the way. You might say, wait, hang on a minute, why don't you take this? I assume there's a reason. The reason is king takes e6, the knight was defending the rook, and then what you would get is this endgame, and this is probably not winning. So knight takes f6, what we get is this simplification, with the rook coming out the way, but this position is just better for white. The knight is still hugely under pressure. It can only go into passivity, or to be captured, or, to try and get out this way. The rook is very strong. And what did I say? 2 weaknesses on dark squares. The dark square bishop does a fantastic job. It's a long-range piece, and it's just a better position. It can't even be explained. It is only better for one move, and that is h5. Hits the knight, forces it, to come this way. And, we continue to march with h6. And yes, you can give me check. I will slide over. And yes, you can even get this down into just a rook endgame. Praggnanandhaa is up a pawn. And that pawn is about to reach h7 as we trade a set of pawns. I come in here. And your king is paralyzed. I can keep my pawn here and go hunting for your weaknesses and push these through. Run my king this way, and it will be perfectly fine. Rook to h3, king slides over to d2, check, and now I go forwards. And what can you do? King e3 is played, and what can Praggnanandhaa really... What can Anish do to stop Praggnanandhaa? What can he do? Rook h3 check. Oh, slide too far. The king goes up to e4. We get c4 trying to disrupt the stuff. So takes. But I go this way. I fully give up like both of these pawns because you will not stop this one. And so after some more moves, h7 is played. And you can't stop it because yes, you can go here, but I take this. And it's check. And I might even be sly, move over here, or go here, let you take the pawn and then skewer you. And so Praggnanandhaa wins, and after round 1, we have a tie for first place between Praggnanandhaa Rameshbabu, Fabiano Caruana, and Javokhir Sindarov. But ladies and gentlemen, has this affected how you view the candidates? Has this affected your predictions? It is, after all, only round 1. There are still 13 more rounds to go. But it has been a very fast start at the FIDE Candidates for 2026.